Lucy pushed her cleaning cart down the long corridor of the imperial palace, her soft shoes making no sound on the polished stone floor. The walls around her glowed with a gentle blue light that came from somewhere deep within the material itself. She had worked in this palace for 5 years now, and she still did not understand how they made their walls glow like that. She had stopped asking questions a long time ago. The corridor stretched ahead of her, empty and silent. This was the upper level of the palace, where only the most trusted servants were allowed to work. Lucy was not sure why they trusted her. She was just a human, one of the primitive species from a small planet called Earth that had only joined the Galactic Compact 12 years ago. Most barely noticed her when she walked past them. She was invisible to them, just another cleaning woman pushing a cart. Lucy stopped at the next door and checked her assignment list. Room 47B, the small receiving chamber. She pressed her service badge against the door panel and waited for the soft click that meant she could enter. The room inside was beautiful, like all the rooms in this palace. Tall windows looked out over the city of Erin, where thousands of silver towers reached up toward the purple sky. Lucy had seen this view many times, but it still took her breath away sometimes. She began her work, wiping down the surfaces with the special cloth that removed dust without leaving any marks. They were very particular about their furniture. Everything had to be perfect, especially now. The Galactic Unity celebration was happening tomorrow, and the entire palace was preparing for it. Lucy had heard the other servants talking about the celebration for weeks now. It was the biggest event in the Galactic Compact calendar, a ceremony where all the member species came together to celebrate their alliance. The Emperor himself would speak to the gathered delegates, and the whole thing would be broadcast live across every member world. Someone had told Lucy that over 90 billion beings would be watching. She could not even imagine a number that large. She finished the receiving chamber and moved on to the next room. As she walked, she passed 2 imperial guards standing at their posts. They were tall and silver-skinned, with 4 arms and eyes that shifted from blue to gold as they watched her pass. They did not speak to her. They never did. Lucy was used to it by now. When she had first come to Erin, the way the treated humans had bothered her. They were not cruel exactly, just dismissive. Humans were newcomers to the galactic stage, a species that had only developed faster-than-light travel within the last century. They had been traveling between stars for over 10,000 years. To them, humans were like children who had just learned to walk. Lucy had learned not to take it personally. She had a job to do and she did it well. That was enough for her. She reached the end of the corridor and checked her list again. Her eyes widened when she saw the next assignment. The Emperor's private meditation chamber. That was unusual. Lucy had never been assigned to clean that room before. It was one of the most restricted areas in the entire palace. She made her way to the meditation chamber, passing through 2 more security checkpoints. The guards scanned her badge each time and waved her through without a word. When she finally reached the door, she paused for a moment. She had never been this close to the Emperor's personal quarters. The door opened silently, and Lucy stepped inside. The meditation chamber was smaller than she had expected. The walls were dark, almost black, and the only light came from a single window that looked out at the night sky. In the center of the room was a simple mat where the Emperor would sit during his meditation. There was nothing else. No furniture, no decorations, nothing. Just empty space and silence. Lucy felt strange being here, like she was intruding on something private. She worked quickly, dusting the window frame and cleaning the floor around the mat. She was careful not to touch the mat itself. That seemed like it would be disrespectful somehow. As she worked, she heard voices outside the door. 2 guards were talking in low tones, and Lucy could just barely make out their words. "The security sweep found nothing," one guard said, "but the commander is still worried." "Worried about what?" the other guard asked. "Threats against the Emperor. There have been messages from the separatist faction. They say tomorrow will be a day of reckoning." Lucy felt a chill run down her spine. She had heard of the Separatists, a group of species who wanted to break away from the Galactic Compact, but she had never heard of them threatening the Emperor directly. "The commander has doubled the guard for tomorrow," the first guard continued. "Nothing will happen. The Emperor will be safe." The voices faded as the guards moved away. Lucy finished her work and left the meditation chamber, her heart beating a little faster than before. She told herself there was nothing to worry about. The Imperial Guards were the best soldiers in the galaxy. They would protect the Emperor. She returned to the servants' quarters as the night grew late. Her small room was plain but comfortable, with a bed and a desk and a window that looked out at a small garden. She sat on her bed and thought about tomorrow. 90 billion beings would be watching the ceremony. The Emperor would give his speech. The delegates would celebrate. And Lucy would be working in the service corridors, invisible as always, making sure everything was clean and ready. She lay down and closed her eyes. Tomorrow would be a long day, but it would be a day like any other for her. She was just a maid. Nothing special ever happened to people like her. She had no idea how wrong she was. Outside her window, the stars of the Empire burned bright in the purple sky. Somewhere out there, 90 billion beings were preparing to watch the Galactic Unity celebration. Somewhere out there, plans were being made that would change everything. And Lucy slept peacefully, unaware that her life was about to become the most watched story in galactic history. The morning of the Galactic Unity celebration arrived with bright light and nervous energy. Lucy woke early and put on her cleanest uniform. The head servant had told everyone that today was the most important day of the year, and they all needed to look their best, even if no one would actually see them. Lucy ate a quick breakfast in the servants' dining hall and then reported to her station. She had been assigned to the service corridor behind the throne room, the narrow passage where servants waited with supplies during important ceremonies. Her job was simple. She would keep the corridor clean and make sure the refreshment stations were fully stocked. She would be close to the ceremony but completely hidden from view. The throne room itself was magnificent. Lucy had seen it once before, during a cleaning assignment late at night. It was a vast circular chamber with a domed ceiling that showed the stars of the Empire. The throne sat on a raised platform at the far end, a massive chair carved from a single piece of black crystal. Today, that room would be filled with the most powerful beings in the galaxy. Lucy made her way to the service corridor and began her work. Through the thin walls, she could hear the sounds of the ceremony preparations, voices speaking in a dozen different languages, music playing softly, the hum of broadcast equipment as technicians tested their cameras. The corridor was warm and quiet. Lucy wiped down the refreshment stations and checked the supply cabinets. Everything was in order. She had nothing to do now but wait. An hour passed, then two. Lucy heard the ceremony begin through the walls. A deep voice announced the arrival of the delegates from each member world. Applause followed each announcement. Then came the moment everyone had been waiting for. "All rise for His Imperial Majesty, Emperor of the Empire." Lucy stopped what she was doing and listened. She had never heard the Emperor speak before. His voice was deep and resonant, filling the throne room with a sound that seemed to vibrate in her chest even through the walls. "Citizens of the Galactic Compact," the Emperor said, "we gather today to celebrate what unites us. Our differences are many, but our shared purpose is greater. Together, we have built something that will endure for 10,000 years more." Lucy smiled slightly. It was a good speech. She went back to her work, straightening the supplies on the shelves. Then she heard the scream. It was a sound unlike anything she had ever heard before. A high, sharp cry of shock and terror that cut through the ceremony like a knife. Then came more screams and shouting, and the unmistakable sound of weapons fire. Lucy froze. Her hands gripped the edge of the shelf in front of her. What was happening? Through the wall she could hear chaos, people running, more weapons fire. Someone was shouting orders that she could not understand. She should run. She should find somewhere safe to hide, but her feet would not move. She stood there in the service corridor, listening to the sounds of violence and not understanding any of it. Then the door at the end of the corridor burst open. Lucy spun around and saw a figure stumbling through the doorway. It was tall and silver-skinned, wearing robes of deep purple that were now stained with something darker. The figure took 3 steps into the corridor and then collapsed on the floor. Lucy stared. Her mind could not process what she was seeing. The figure on the floor was Emperor, ruler of the Empire, and he was bleeding. Silver blood pooled on the floor beneath him. His 4 hands clutched at his chest, where a wound glowed with a sickly green light. His eyes, which had been shifting between colors when she saw the guards in the corridor yesterday, were now fixed on a dull gray. "Help," his voice was barely a whisper. "Please." Lucy did not think. She did not consider who he was or what this meant. She saw a person who was hurt and needed help, and she moved. She dropped to her knees beside him and looked at the wound. The green glow was spreading, eating away at the flesh around it. She had never seen anything like it before, but she knew it was bad. She grabbed a cleaning cloth from her cart and pressed it against the wound, trying to stop the bleeding. "Hold on," she said, "just hold on." What she did not know, what she could not possibly know, was that the broadcast cameras had followed the Emperor through the emergency passage. They were programmed to track his biosignature, to follow him wherever he went. And right now, they were recording everything. Across the galaxy, 90 billion beings watched as a small human woman knelt beside their wounded emperor. They saw her press a simple cloth against his chest. They heard her speak to him in her strange human language. In the throne room, Commander stood over the bodies of the loyal guards he had betrayed. His coup was almost complete. He just needed the emperor to die, and then he would claim the throne for the separatist cause. But when he looked at the broadcast screen, he saw something that made his blood run cold. The emperor was still alive, and someone was helping him. "Find them," he ordered his soldiers. "Find them now." Back in the service corridor, Lucy looked down at the emperor. His eyes had focused on her face, and she saw confusion there. He did not understand why she was helping him. She was just a human, one of the primitive species that the barely noticed. "Can you move?" she asked. "I do not know," he said. "We need to get you out of here. Can you tell me where to go?" The emperor's gray eyes studied her face for a long moment. Then he lifted one of his 4 hands and pointed down the corridor. "That way," he said. "There is a safe room." Lucy nodded. She looked at the emperor's body, twice the size of her own. She looked at the corridor stretching ahead of them, and she made a decision. "Put your arms around my shoulders," she said. "I am going to carry you." The emperor stared at her. No human had ever touched an emperor before. It was unthinkable. But Lucy did not wait for his permission. She grabbed his arms and pulled them over her shoulders. Then she stood up, lifting him with her. He was heavy, heavier than anything she had ever carried before. But Lucy had spent 5 years pushing heavy carts and lifting heavy supplies. She was stronger than she looked. She started walking. Lucy moved down the service corridor with the emperor across her shoulders. Every step was a struggle. His body was heavy and awkward, and his 4 arms kept slipping from her grip. The silver blood from his wound soaked through her uniform and ran down her back. She could feel its warmth against her skin. The corridor ahead was long and dark. Lucy had walked these passages 1,000 times during her years at the palace. She knew every turn, every door, every hidden shortcut. The service corridors were her world, the invisible pathways that the nobles never saw. Now that knowledge might save the emperor's life. She heard footsteps behind her, heavy boots on stone. The traitors were searching for them. Lucy moved faster. She turned left at the next junction and pressed herself against the wall, holding the emperor tight. The footsteps passed by on the main corridor and faded into the distance. She waited until she could not hear them anymore, then started moving again. "You know these passages," the Emperor said. His voice was weak, barely a whisper against her ear. "I clean them," Lucy said, "every day for 5 years. I have lived in this palace for 300 years. I have never seen these corridors. That is because they are for servants. We are invisible to you." The Emperor was silent for a moment. Lucy kept walking. What she did not know was that the broadcast cameras were still following them. The tiny devices floated silently in the air behind her, recording every word she said. Across the galaxy, 90 billion beings leaned closer to their screens. They watched this small human woman carry their emperor through the darkness. They listened to her speak to him like he was just another person who needed help. On the home fleet, Admiral Thrace watched the broadcast with tears in his silver eyes. His ships were racing toward Erin at maximum speed, but they were still hours away. All he could do was watch and hope that this human woman could do what his entire fleet could not. On Earth, Ambassador Vance stood in the embassy control room with her staff. Every screen showed the same image. Lucy, a woman whose name Vance had never heard before, was carrying the Emperor to safety. Vance realized that everything would change after today. Humanity's place in the galaxy would never be the same. Lucy reached another junction and stopped to catch her breath. Her legs were burning. Her shoulders ached. The Emperor seemed to grow heavier with every step, but she could not stop now. "What is your name?" the Emperor asked. "Lucy, Lucy." "Lucy, why are you helping me?" Lucy did not understand the question. She shifted his weight on her shoulders and started walking again. "You are hurt," she said. "You need help. What other reason do I need?" "I am the Emperor. My life has value to the Empire, but you do not serve the Empire. You are just a human worker. If the traitors catch you with me, they will kill you." "I know." "Then why?" Lucy thought about the question as she walked. She thought about her life on Earth before she came to the stars. She thought about her mother, who had worked as a nurse for 40 years. She thought about her father, who had spent his life as a firefighter, running into burning buildings to save people he had never met. "Where I come from," Lucy said, "we do not ask if someone deserves to be saved. We just save them. That is what humans do." The Emperor did not respond, but something changed in his gray eyes. He looked at her differently now, like he was seeing her for the first time. They reached a security door. Lucy pressed her service badge against the panel, but the light flashed red. The door was locked. "Traitor override," the Emperor said. "They have locked down the palace." Lucy's heart sank. Without access to the doors, they were trapped. The traitors would find them eventually. "Is there another way?" she asked. "No, this door leads to the only passage to the safe room." Lucy looked at the door. She looked at the Emperor. She thought about giving up, but the thought only lasted a second. She had not carried him this far to stop now. "Can you open it?" she asked. "You are the Emperor, you must have override codes." "I do, but I need to reach the panel." Lucy moved closer to the door and lowered the Emperor so he could reach the control panel with one of his hands. His fingers moved slowly across the surface, entering a long sequence of symbols. The panel beeped, and the light changed to green. The door slid open. "Thank you," Lucy said. "I should be thanking you," the Emperor replied. They moved through the door and into another corridor. This one was wider and better lit. Lucy could see another door at the far end, larger and heavier than the others. That must be the safe room. She was halfway there when she heard voices ahead. She stopped and listened. 2 guards were talking in, and Lucy could not understand the words, but she could hear the tone. These were not friendly voices. She looked around for somewhere to hide. There was a small alcove to her left, a space where cleaning supplies were stored. She moved into it and pressed herself against the wall, holding the Emperor close. The guards passed by without looking. Lucy held her breath until their footsteps faded. Then she moved again. The safe room door was just ahead now. 20 steps, 15, 10. The Emperor's hand touched her face. His skin was cool and smooth, not like human skin at all. "You are remarkable," he said. "Your people are remarkable. I did not see it before. I was blind." "You were not blind," Lucy said. "You just were not looking." She reached the safe room door and pressed the Emperor's hand against the panel. The door recognized his biosignature and slid open. Inside was a small chamber with medical equipment and communication devices. Safety. Lucy stepped inside and lowered the Emperor onto the medical bed. Her arms were shaking. Her legs could barely hold her up, but she had done it. She had carried him to safety. She did not know that across the galaxy, 90 billion beings were crying and cheering. She did not know that she had just become the most famous human in history. She only knew that she was very, very tired. She sat down on the floor beside the medical bed and closed her eyes. The Emperor watched her from where he lay, this small human woman who had saved his life, and he began to understand something that his people had forgotten long ago. True strength had nothing to do with size or power or technology. True strength was the will to help someone in need, even when it cost you everything. The broadcast had not stopped. Across 300 star systems, 90 billion beings watched the small safe room where Lucy sat on the floor with her eyes closed. The Emperor lay on the medical bed beside her, his wound still glowing with that sickly green light but no longer spreading. The automatic medical systems had stabilized him, but he needed real treatment soon. On the colony world of Meth, a crowd had gathered in the central square to watch the broadcast on the massive public screens. When Lucy had entered the safe room, they had erupted in cheers. Now they stood in silence, watching and waiting. Many of them were crying. A species of small beings who had always considered humans to be clumsy and primitive, the High Council watched the broadcast with new eyes. The valued efficiency and logic above all else. They had never understood why humans did things that served no practical purpose. But watching Lucy carry the Emperor, they began to understand something new. Sometimes the most logical thing was simply to help. On Earth, the broadcast was being shown on every channel. In New York, people stood in Times Square and watched in stunned silence. In Tokyo, commuters stopped on train platforms to stare at their phones. In small towns and big cities, in homes and offices and schools, humanity watched one of their own become a hero. Lucy opened her eyes. She did not know how long she had been sitting there. A few minutes maybe, or maybe longer. Time had stopped meaning anything. The Emperor was watching her. His gray eyes had not left her face since she had carried him into the room. "The medical systems say I will live," he said, "because of you." Lucy nodded. She did not know what to say. "My fleet is coming," the Emperor continued. "Admiral Thrace is 3 hours away. When he arrives, the traitors will be defeated." 3 hours is a long time. "Yes, but we are safe here. This room is designed to withstand any assault. We simply need to wait." Lucy looked around the small chamber. The walls were thick and solid. The door was sealed tight. The Emperor was right. They were safe. But something was bothering her. Something she had noticed but not understood until now. "There are cameras in here," she said. The Emperor followed her gaze to the small devices floating near the ceiling. "The broadcast cameras," he said. "They follow me wherever I go. They are programmed to record everything I do during official functions." Lucy felt her face grow warm. "People are watching us right now. The entire galaxy is watching us. They have been watching since the attack began." Lucy stared at him. The entire galaxy, 90 billion beings. They had watched her clean the Emperor's wound with a dirty cloth. They had watched her carry him through the service corridors. They had heard everything she said. "I did not know," she whispered. "I realize that now. That is what makes it remarkable. The Emperor slowly sat up on the medical bed. His wound had stopped bleeding, but he was still weak. He looked at Lucy with an expression she did not recognize. "You helped me because you wanted to help," he said. "Not for reward, not for recognition. You did not even know anyone was watching. You simply saw someone who was hurt and decided to save them. That is just what humans do. No, that is what you do, and your species does. We have had humans in our empire for 12 years. We have dismissed you as primitives, as children who had barely learned to walk among the stars. We were wrong." Across the galaxy, those words hit like thunder. The Emperor of the Empire, one of the most powerful beings in known space, had just admitted that his people were wrong about humans. Leaders and diplomats and ordinary citizens watched in amazement. Ambassador Vance stood in the Earth Embassy with tears running down her face. She had spent her entire career trying to earn respect for humanity among the older species. And now, because of one woman's simple act of kindness, everything had changed. In the safe room, Lucy shook her head. "I am not special," she said. "I am just a maid. I clean rooms. That is all I do. You carried me half a mile through the palace while assassins hunted you. You risked your life for someone you had never met, someone who belongs to a species that has treated your people as inferior. That does not matter. It should matter. Why does it not matter to you?" Lucy thought about the question. She thought about her parents again, about the lessons they had taught her. She thought about all the humans throughout history who had helped strangers, who had run toward danger instead of away from it, who had given everything for people they would never know. "Because," she said slowly, "being good is not about what you get in return. It is about who you are. My mother always said that character is what you do when no one is watching. I thought no one was watching, so I just did what felt right." The Emperor was silent for a long moment. Then he did something that no emperor had ever done before. He reached out with one of his 4 hands and took Lucy's small human hand in his own. "Thank you, Lucy. Thank you for reminding me what true nobility looks like." The broadcast cameras recorded the moment. Across the galaxy, 90 billion beings watched a human maid and an alien emperor hold hands in a small, safe room. And something shifted in the way the galaxy thought about humanity. They were not primitives. They were not children. They were something else entirely, something that the older species had forgotten how to be. They were kind. 3 hours later, Admiral Thrace's fleet arrived. The traitors were captured. The palace was secured. And Lucy was carried out of the safe room by Imperial guards who treated her like royalty. She was still wearing her blood-stained servant's uniform. She was still just a maid from Earth, but everything had changed. The galaxy would never look at humans the same way again. 3 weeks had passed since the assassination attempt. The purple sky of Erin was bright with morning light as Lucy woke in a bed that was far too large for her. The room around her was beautiful, with walls that glowed softly and windows that looked out over the silver towers of the capital city. It was a guest chamber in the imperial palace, the kind of room reserved for visiting dignitaries and noble families. Lucy still did not understand how she had ended up here. The first few days after the attack had been a blur. She had woken up in a medical facility, surrounded by doctors who treated her like she was made of glass. They had told her she was suffering from exhaustion and muscle strain, nothing serious. They had told her to rest. But resting had been impossible. Every time she closed her eyes, there were more visitors. Diplomats and journalists and military officers, all of them wanting to meet the human who had saved the emperor. Lucy had answered their questions as best she could, but she did not have much to say. She had just done what needed to be done. Now, 3 weeks later, the attention had not stopped. Lucy had learned that the broadcast of her carrying the emperor had been watched by over 100 billion beings. It had been replayed on every network in the Galactic Compact. There were songs about her. There were paintings. Children on distant planets were pretending to be her in their games. Lucy, the invisible maid, had become the most famous human in the galaxy. A soft chime at her door told her she had a visitor. Lucy got out of bed and put on the simple robe that had been provided for her. She walked to the door and opened it. An official stood outside, dressed in formal robes. He bowed deeply. "Miss, the Emperor requests your presence in the throne room. A transport is waiting." Lucy nodded. She had been expecting this summons. The Emperor had visited her twice in the medical facility, but they had not spoken much. He had been busy dealing with the aftermath of the coup. Commander and the other traitors had been captured and were awaiting trial. The separatist movement had been crushed. The Empire was slowly returning to normal. But there was one thing left to do. Lucy dressed in the clothes that had been given to her, a simple blue dress that was nicer than anything she had ever owned. She followed the official to a waiting transport and was carried across the city to the imperial palace. The throne room was different now. The last time Lucy had been near this place, she had been hiding in a service corridor while chaos erupted on the other side of the wall. Now the room was peaceful, filled with sunlight from the great windows. Hundreds of beings stood along the walls, delegates from every species in the Galactic Compact, and at the far end of the room, Emperor sat on his throne of black crystal. Lucy walked down the long aisle toward the throne. Her footsteps echoed in the silence. She could feel hundreds of eyes watching her, but she kept her gaze fixed on the Emperor ahead. When she reached the base of the throne, she stopped and bowed her head. She did not know the proper protocol for addressing an emperor. She hoped that a simple bow would be enough. "Lucy," the Emperor said. His voice filled the room, strong and clear. He had fully recovered from his wound. "3 weeks ago, you saved my life. You carried me through the darkness when my own guards had betrayed me. You risked everything for someone you did not know. Today, I wish to honor your courage." He rose from his throne and descended the steps toward her. In his 4 hands, he carried a small box made of the same black crystal as his throne. "I present to you the star of the highest honor our empire can bestow upon a non-citizen. You are the first human to ever receive this award, but you will not be the last." He opened the box. Inside was a small silver medal in the shape of a star, hanging from a purple ribbon. The Emperor lifted the medal and placed it around Lucy's neck. "Your actions have changed the way my people see humanity," the Emperor continued. "For too long, we dismissed your species as young and primitive. We were blind to your true nature. You have shown us that strength is not measured in years or technology. Strength is measured in the willingness to help others, even at great cost to yourself." He turned to address the assembled delegates. "Let it be known throughout the Galactic Compact that humanity has proven itself worthy of our respect. They are not children. They are not primitives. They are our equals in every way that matters." The room erupted in applause. Beings of every shape and size clapped their hands or tentacles or other appendages. Lucy stood there with the medal around her neck, not knowing what to do. The Emperor turned back to her. "Is there anything you wish to say, Lucy?" Lucy looked out at the assembled delegates. She thought about everything that had happened. She thought about the service corridors where she had worked for 5 years, invisible and unnoticed. She thought about her family back on Earth, who had watched the broadcast and cried. "I just did what anyone would do," she said. Her voice was quiet, but in the silent room everyone could hear her. "I saw someone who was hurt and I helped them. That is all. That is what humans do. We help people. It does not matter who they are or where they come from. If someone needs help, we help them." She paused and looked up at the Emperor. "Thank you for this honor, but I hope that someday, helping someone will not be seen as remarkable. I hope it will just be normal. I hope that kindness will be so common that no one thinks to celebrate it anymore." The room was silent. Then the Emperor smiled, something that Lucy had never seen him do before. "That is a beautiful hope, Lucy. Perhaps with your help we can make it true." 1 month later, Lucy stood in the garden of her parents' home in Ohio. The sky was blue and the trees were green and everything looked exactly the same as she remembered. Her mother held her tight, crying and laughing at the same time. Her father stood beside them, trying not to cry and failing. "We watched the whole thing," her mother said. "The whole world watched. We were so scared. We were so proud." "I was just doing my job," Lucy said. "No, sweetheart. You were doing something much more important than that." Lucy stayed on Earth for 2 weeks. She visited her old friends and ate her favorite foods and tried to remember what normal life felt like. But she knew she could not stay forever. The galaxy was waiting for her. When she returned to Erin, she did not go back to the servants' quarters. The Emperor had offered her a position as a cultural ambassador, a bridge between humanity and the Empire. She had accepted, partly because she wanted to help her people, and partly because she was not ready to leave the stars behind. But sometimes, late at night, Lucy would walk through the service corridors of the palace. She would run her fingers along the walls that she used to clean. She would remember the person she had been before everything changed. The invisible maid who had carried an emperor to safety. She was not invisible anymore, but she would never forget where she came from, and she would never stop helping people who needed it. That was just what humans did.